So I'm kind of interested in the conversations that's kind of emerged, and then also the kind of snacks archetype thing that you've got going on here, and as kind of a caveat before my question, I guess I'm kind of the type of person who tends to react against the kind of project of classification, because in so doing, things tend to get left out. I kind of come from a religious studies background where once you decide something's canon, you're deciding what's not canon, right? That goes in the dumpster. And I guess my question is, how do we, especially since gaming and games are a medium that is still trying to identify the boundaries of what constitutes game and what doesn't constitute game, how do you avoid the pitfalls of, by saying this is library worthy, then saying all of these things that are not library worthy aren't included? Does that make sense?
Well, and actually that's something libraries have done for a long time. That's what libraries do, is they select from the libraries don't keep all books.
Sure. Yeah.
They keep a tiny portion of books, actually. If you think about, so it's in line with what libraries do, and then what happens is actually I teach classes on this, on collection development is the term. The concept of collection development is deciding for a specific user group and a purpose should it be involved in a collection, what should be excluded from that collection. And it's something that libraries always have to face, and the challenge with it is that it's not universal across libraries. Not all academic libraries have the same collections or would want to. Each library has to look at their own users and say, for these groups of users that are our taxpayers, we're going to create these kinds of collections. So therefore, while I can provide these sort of general, here's how to think about your gaming experiences, I can't really go much further than that. That's why it's kind of general, because what I'm helping the library to do is to take that first stab to say, okay, out of the world of games, if our goal is to promote literacy through gaming, this model helps you to limit that down a little bit to games that are more justifiable to connect literacy to gaming. Sure. To take that step of here's everything. Because the other thing that happens is if they can't get past that, they say, well, my teenage son likes to play Halo, let's have a Halo tournament. That's really what's been happening. Sure. That's what this was to help the libraries have some first step process to say, how do we select what it is? But really, being picky is something that we do.
And, I mean, do you see and maybe hope for a future where there's more experts who are doing this kind of curating process, so that it's not someone who doesn't know about gaming trying to inform themselves enough to do the process, or that there will be enough people out there who care about it enough and want to do the curating that they'll then bring that expertise on that.
One of the reasons why I'm interested in coming to MIT and speaking to all of you is because, as I told someone I've worked with a lot in the library gaming space, I say, I can't preach to the choir anymore, I need to get some more singers. So when I go and speak to serious games conferences and speak to folks who are outside of libraries, a lot of what I'm trying to do, what I would love to do, is inspire each of you to go to your local library and say, hey, I know a lot about games. And if you're trying to put together a gaming program, if you're trying to build up a gaming collection, I can help guide you. So part of what I'm doing is not only being evangelical in the library space and saying, hey, games are something to look at, I'm trying to be evangelical outside of libraries to say, hey, there's opportunities in the libraries to get engaged with. And just like with school libraries, if you get one school librarian who gets excited about gaming, they can get 100 teachers excited about gaming, as compared to trying to excite 100 teachers one at a time. This is why in the public library space, I've talked why we've gotten Hasbro and North Star Games and some of these games to give lots of copies to libraries, because they realized if we get a copy of a game in a library and a lot of people see it, many more of those people will go out and buy games. If you're doing game creation, or you're an independent game publisher and you want to work with people, you want to get people engaging with your games, the library is that conduit to a lot of different people. So that's a lot of what I see, and why, as I told her, I said, I've kind of said what I need to say to the librarians. Now I need to go out and say this to other people and come back with new stuff for the librarians. That's part of what I'm looking to do, is really open my mind beyond what I've been seeing, and so bring that back. But also open the doors and say, hey, there's a lot of cool potential in libraries for bringing together, because libraries are the only place after high school where tax dollars pay for continuing education. Once you get out of high school, there's no publicly funded educational space. You may have PBS if your station's still on the air. There's the web if you happen to have a web-based computer. I mean, people assume everyone has computers and internet access. That's not true.
Student loans.
And so it's that, how do we continue to give something to everyone? And gaming can be a part of that. But again, that's part of why I want to empower you all. In fact, the class I did a study at the end of the survey at the end of the class. One of the questions I asked on there was, how is this class going to change you? What outcome is this going to have in your life? A third of the people who took the class said, or I should say, who took the survey after taking the class, said, I don't do anything with libraries now, but I'm going to go to a library and volunteer my time to help them start a gaming program. That's pretty cool, and that comes from this YouTube set of videos I do, but that's part of what I'm trying to do, is get the word out and say, you all are smart, help libraries become smart too. Yeah.
I was actually on a panel at PAX, the Penny Arcade Expo, this summer. And one of the questions we got a lot in the panel was, how are you going to overcome resistance to game studies? It was a panel on why people do game studies and what we were doing. And what I mostly and some of my colleagues argued was, there's an issue of generational change, right? Like once the old guard who thinks video games are just ways for kids to fritter away their lives in Pac-Man, are no longer in positions of controlling power, then perhaps we might flourish a little more. I'm wondering how that ties into funding for game-related stuff and projects, because I'm trying to imagine the various small towns I've lived in, who I'm sure would love to do gaming stuff, going to the city alderman, the town, the mayor, the city council, and asking, Margaret McHousewife, age 65, for money to start, a game of the week or whatever at their library, and her going, oh no, we can't afford to do that. Do you think, in the same sense that once people in the industry start dying, we're going to get their stuff? Do you think is that kind of generational change necessary also for this to succeed in libraries, or is there availability of funding and things like that now that we don't kind of have to wait for that?
Well, the generational change will help, but most public libraries have in their mission or goals that they're designed to support the recreational needs of the community they support, which they have been doing, in many cases, they've already been doing with gaming. Which is why some of my argument, I present that history to say, you've already had this going on for a long time. And that's why it's so important to tie in the gaming decisions to the goals and the missions of the library. Those goals and missions have been set in conjunction with representatives of the taxpayer body. Most libraries are governed by library boards. The library boards help set the goals and the missions for the library. So the library is funded through tax dollars, and these people say, yes, we're willing to entrust you with the money, here's the missions you'll fit. If you fit the gaming and you develop gaming programs so they fit that mission, then it can work. If you ignore that and just start gaming because gaming is cool, then you struggle, and that's where the problem comes in. But if you're able to say, hey, look, we started this rock band event, and we started because we're supporting the recreational needs of the community, and the impact is that we are now circulating 5 times as much teen material. Teens are now taking books home because they can bring the book back at the next one. They didn't even know we had books they wanted. Well, that's pretty interesting, so that's part of why that assessment is so critical. Why embedding it within the mission and goals of the library is the important place to start, and assessing what happened is critical to be able to make that argument and say, look, and this is why the story about what really got me looking at game design came out of 4 rural South Carolina libraries. So one of my students from Syracuse, who got hired as a gaming librarian. We're starting to see some of those now, gaming librarians. He got hired by 4 rural South Carolina libraries, pooled their resources to hire him as a shared resource to go from library to library and run gaming programs with their teens. Now, many of these teens have no aspirations beyond, just getting to the next day. He started game design. He started a game design program with these groups. He started to bring in some game design folks to talk to the kids about career paths in game design. And we are seeing now those kids have college aspirations. And these were kids that were never going to do anything, but the gaming got them motivated. The game design was what got them really motivated. And I said, that's really awesome. I want to explore that more. And so that was really, for me, the spark. that made me say, okay, that's my next thing, is I really want to help bring back to libraries how they could wholesale do more and more game design stuff. So that was a pretty neat, that was sort of my twisting point. But again, it's assessing what you're doing and having those outcomes and being able to say, this is why what we did mattered. And that's, I think we drop the ball on that a lot. We do stuff because we think it's cool, but we're not able to say at the end what difference it made. And embedding that in the beginning and the planning is a critical part of what we're doing.
So I'm thinking of going on a bit with what Todd was saying, all these lists of most challenged books, and are you afraid, or like what, are you anticipating that there will be lists of the most challenged board and
Video games.
video
all that.
games
Oh, sure,
and
we hope
label
so.
libraries?
You know, that's awesome, and someone cares enough to talk about library collections. We actually talk about book challenges and things like that, and what's funny is, you know, 10 years ago, what do you think the #1 most challenged book was in libraries? Harry Potter. Harry Potter, when it came out, flew up the charts on the most challenged books. It's about witchcraft. Oh my God, we can't have any of this stuff. And what happened is, as the books came out more and more and they got more and more popular, it disappeared from the lists. It plummeted down and was no longer challenged. Now, the books didn't get less about witchcraft. What do you think happened?
People came into the books and then got other books?
It made a difference. Parents saw their kids were reading. Wow, you know, maybe this isn't so bad. And again, it's tied into outcomes. The parents saw outcomes from this. They saw it made a difference. And I think we'll see the same thing. We see that with games. We see people say, why are you doing gaming? And if you could say, oh, well, look, here's the difference it makes. Look, your kid now is hanging out with these senior citizens who are other members of the community and is learning about what's going on in the community. And that's pretty cool, you know? And that's so much of this is, and this, I'm a bit soapboxy about this because the class I teach, one of the core classes we teach our students in library science, and I'm teaching it in the spring, is library planning, marketing, and assessment. Because it's all about libraries being able to plan what they're doing, market it outside of library space, and assess. How many of you knew about National Gaming Day at your library? Okay, so you know this is something that is a national movement. As of right now, 20% of all public libraries in the US have signed up to be a part of it. There's about 10,000 public libraries in the US, 2,000 have signed up and saying they're going to do it. That's pretty wild. When you can get 20% of all the public libraries say, we're going to do games on the same day. But they're not good at marketing it. They're not good at advertising it. And that's been one of the things I shout and scream about. And I'm not going to be quiet. Yeah.
I thought it was very telling that you had the slide that, you know, showed the LAN party, and, you know, you mentioned your anecdote about the librarian who said it's a room full of boys shooting people.
Right.
So I wonder what you've seen in terms of the people who actually come to these gaming programs. Is there in fact a gender correlation? My suspicion is yes. And if so, you know, how do you make a gaming program, you know, that appeals to women as well as men?
It depends upon, again, this falls down to the goal of the gaming program.
Mm-hmm.
Tournaments tend to draw more boys.
Mm-hmm.
Open gaming tends to draw a better mixed generation space. The type of gaming tends to, if you have, there's a fellow, Eli Neuberger, who does really cool work. He's actually got a program, he's a librarian in Ann Arbor. They've been doing great stuff with gaming. He actually runs a program called GT System, which is on the internet. Any library can use it, and it's a whole game tournament ranking system. And he talks about this. He talks about which tournaments bring in the boys, which tournaments bring in the girls. And he said tournaments don't usually bring in girls, but Mario Kart, the Mario Kart tournaments do. And part of it is it's presented as a team tournament. It's a Mario Kart Double Dash. And so he said team tournaments tend to bring in more girl players. But part of it is what the games are you select. And thinking about what, if you tend, it really falls in line with the same gender roles we've seen as to what sorts of games draw different genders and how they're marketed. So a big beat 'em up tournament, a fighting tournament, a Halo tournament is going to draw more of the male folks. The game creation stuff can draw in more female players. It comes down to the library and what it is they feel is important. To be honest, it's harder to draw males into the library. Teen males are a harder group than teen females. So part of it is addressing that's already in place, trying to help more teen males to come back to the library. But it's just like any other service. You have to think about who it is you're marketing and select the games appropriately. and target those groups. But yes, is the answer. There are gender issues that go on, and trying to think about how to address those is a challenge.
So I'm a librarian myself, and I think
Get 'em.
and literacy is sort of one of the charges that I'm very passionate about. And I think there's basically two sides to literacy, where there's the reading, but then there's also creation of content. And I guess my question is, in terms of gaming literacy or content creation in gaming, have you found or come across any scenarios where games themselves have been used as engines for allowing people to create their own content? When I think of like Red vs. Blue, people using Halo 3, the Forge creation,
Yeah.
to actually build their own stories and their own characters and things like that.
Yeah, there's a number of, and I guess with literacy, so in this type of group, it's also important to refine that you're talking about like reading, writing literacy. It's like what type, because there's tons of types of literacies, identifying a system and a set of rules, using the rules to manipulate the system is literacy. I tried that argument, by the way, when I first got involved with libraries and gaming, to say, well, yeah, actually gaming improves its literacy if you look at the broad definition of literacy as the recognition of a system, set of rules, and the manipulation of things. That didn't work. I learned really quickly that argument is not going to fall. So that's where I started for the library space using the more traditional literacy terms, and where that sort of narrative category came from, because I got kind of disgusted / tired of people showing a loading screen and saying, look, people are learning to read because they're choosing save and load. Don't go there. If you're going to do the literacy claim, you gotta really do it. That it's not cutscenes that you can push your button past that have words on the screen that are teaching people how to read. But to get to your question, so I know of libraries that have done Little Big Planet things where they have the kids make little Big Planet levels. I know of libraries that have done Second Life work where they bring the kids together in a room. That Second Life, is it a game, isn't it a game, it's virtual world, put that aside. A game-like experience there. So we've seen some of the work with Second Life. I know some libraries have done machinima things, and they actually do a machinima screening at the end of a class. So they'll have kids come together each week for a month, make machinima, and then they'll do a public screening of the machinima. And make an event out of it. And that's kind of one of the cool things that happens with the creation, is when you get kids together, or anyone together, have them make stuff, and then you have a public event. Come and see what our community has made. So yes, and I think we're going to see more of that, the creation. There's Tangent Man over here. So one of the libraries there's a library in Delft called the Library Concept Center, and they call themselves the most advanced public library in the world. And I've been there, and I would believe it. They do really neat things. One of the things they're doing along the lines of creation, so they have Microsoft Surfaces out in their library. You walk up with Surfaces in a library. So that should be your first indication. And one thing that's a little different over there is you have to pay for a library card. It's not free. So A, they have a funding stream that our libraries here don't have. B, they have a responsibility to be something that's worthwhile to be paid for. So one of the projects they have right now is called like Living Stories or something. What you do is you take out your library card, you drop it onto a Microsoft Surface. It searches the library archives and pulls up pictures from around where you live. It's a history. You pick a picture, you touch it, you then take your card over to one of these video booths, and you record a story from your life that's related to that picture. And that becomes part of the library collection. And that's this cultural heritage stuff. And that's this creation and getting the community to create. And that's active and running right now. These guys are really cool. There's actually a video series they do called This Week in Libraries. They're kind of like video rocks, they're kind of like the library rock stars. I went to one of their talks at a conference recently. And so the guy's up there talking, but rather than have a PowerPoint or anything, he has a cameraman who is filming and showing live what is coming out of that camera, like a rock concert. And so the guy's running around the room pointing the camera, and they're these interesting people. But they're doing some really cool stuff, and a lot of it's engaged with getting stuff from the community, getting engagement from the community, and helping the community to create. The library being a point of creation, not just a point of dissemination. And that's a lot of where libraries are moving today.